This is the brand new Kia Carens. Now Kia would like you and me to pronounce the name as Carens because all their 3-row cars that they're going to launch in India most probably will start with the name Car, much like the Carnival. But these differences in pronunciation apart, the Kia Carens is actually a very well thought out product. How and why? Well, that's exactly what we're going to tell you in the course of this film, so do stick around. Now the Carens is based on the Seltos. So it's the same platform, it uses the same engines, the same gearboxes. But what Kia engineers have done is that they have extended the wheelbase and then with it the length of the car for Carens compared to the Seltos, and which is pretty obvious when you look at it in the front 3/4. So it has that MPV character dripping out of it. But just to take that edge away and make it seem more appealing, to add a little bit more pizzazz to the overall design, to make it more aspirational if you will, they have added these elements like a really buff front. They have added plastic cladding on the wheel arches. So they've tried to jazz it up, and I think that has worked, but it cannot escape from the fact that this is an MPV while the Seltos back to back you can see is more, how should I say, it's stout. And so that blocky design comes through, which is very characterful of a SUV, which is missing on the Carens. Now that MPV flavor also seems to come through from the rear, much like in profile. And even though the Kia designers have tried to give it a little sweep, they've also tried to add some chrome to add that lifestyle element. But with this low loading lip height, which is extremely practical of course for an MPV, you can tell that this is still very MPV-ish. And in my opinion, I think the rear end design is probably the weakest element in the whole Carens design package. MPV-ish or not, the Carens is a good looking car. It's got road presence and an appealing design going for it. However, in a world where from an accountant to a superstar, from an 18-year-old to an 80-year-old, everybody just wants an SUV, the Carens clearly has an uphill task. So it has to do more than just appeal to consumers with its design. It has to surprise us in so many ways, and probably that begins when you step inside. Once you step inside the Carens, it's obvious that the Kia engineers and designers wanted to offer something fresh, something modern, but something again that evoked premiumness or that kind of feel it gave. But it was also logical and thoughtful. So you've got this design which is more, you could say, MPV-ish. It's slightly tall and flat, but it looks really nice. They've gone away from the single slab design that we've seen in the Seltos and the Sonnet, and it's more conventional in a sense, but I like this. You've got a virtual cockpit there, but it's the storage spaces that really are an interesting and practical thing, which is again an MPV trait, and that comes out. So you've got storage here, which is also a small tray here, which is quite practical. You've got pop-out cup holders from the dashboard. Nothing really unique there. We've seen that in the Wagonrs in the past, but it's a nice practical touch. You've also got a coin tray here, and everywhere you look, there is place to put your stuff. You've got, you can put your cell phone here. It's also got wireless charging. You've got lots of places here to put bottles, even an umbrella there. So very well thought out, nice looking interior. Once you step inside, it feels good, and I think that is going to be one of the strong draws for the Carens when people look at it and see. The only real issue I have here is the color that they've used for what you would say is black plastic. I don't know if you can tell because you can only tell it in different lighting, but everything you see, this, the dash here, the door here, all of this is blue. For me, I haven't warmed up to it yet. I would much rather see a black layout because that's what we've seen over the years, but let's see how consumers react to that. Now in terms of features, the Carens gets quite a bit of safety kit as standard. It's got 6 airbags, it's got ESP, it's got downhill brake control, it's got tire pressure monitoring system, and as standard you get ABS and rear parking sensors as well. Now this is the Luxury Plus model, and that means you get a sunroof, you've got doors with lamps that spot Kia logos. You've got ambient lighting, and of course you've got driving modes, sport, normal and eco, which we will tell you a little later about. You also get captain seats in the second row as an option. This one of course has the bench, and in both cases you get recline and sliding functions. You get ventilated front seats, you've got sunglass holder, you've got rear boarding assist handles, and you've got rain sensing wipers. Multimedia system, as with the Sonnet and the Seltos, is a huge display unit, and the UI too is quite sorted. Now in this case it's not a one block unit, you've got two separate units, one for multimedia and one for the driver information system, and the driver information system is also a virtual cockpit. The information available is immense, and there are various screens that one needs to swipe through to get to where they need to go. You also get next generation Kia Connect, and you've got smart air purifier with virus and bacteria protection, which is now a standard feature in the more expensive variants of all Kia cars. Now for what the Carens is, it's going to be used extensively for commuting in the city and on the highway. And for that you need seats that are comfortable, you need space, and the feeling of space also has to be there, because if all that is set right, then the fatigue factor comes down drastically, and that's what you want. Now right up front you've got seats that are cushy and thick. You've also got decent bolstering at the back and at the bottom. They're not really big seats, but and I'm not really thin, so they can hold me well, so I think it should work for most. They're also adjustable for height, apart from of course the recline and fore and aft movement. But it's this that you can adjust the steering for reach and for rake, and along with the height adjustable seat you can find just the right driving position, which again is something that you need if you want to do really long distance or many hours of driving without stopping. So that is really well done on this on the Carens, and so they've thought about it. And again, it just makes me think that that MPV route is just not disappearing, or that thread is still there here too, because that's what you want to look at, right, over other things. It's also quite easy to get in and out of. Your knees are not going to bang into anything. Even the steering, you can take it up, the seat low, so if you're a tall person, that's also not an issue. Again, easy to step in and step out of. And now let's see what it's like at the back. Now this is where most people are going to spend their time, in the second row of the Carens, and we love being chauffeur driven in India, and I think that's where this comes in. Now that's the air purifier there, but here when you sit you get a table, you've got a cup holder, you can put your iPad or phone if you want to watch something, so that's practical. But it's the seat, it's again cushy like at the front, and it's adjustable for rails are out, and you can also adjust the seat back to whatever angle you like. Headrest adjustable again. So overall it's again very comfortable to be in, and I love the fact that it's got such a huge window. It's almost like, you know, traveling in the train as we used to earlier on, so that romance comes back. Imagine the scenery passing through such a huge thing. I love that. And this gives you that feeling of space, which again, as we mentioned earlier, takes the fatigue away from your travel. If anything, I mean, I really can't find faults here. Thigh support is also good, and like I said, everything is adjustable. Of course, putting a third person at the back is going to be a challenge. Whoever sits here is not going to be comfortable. This, by the way, not the easiest to use, but once you manage, you get an armrest, and you've got two cup holders there, so that's a practical touch as well. You've got vents here. These are your rear vents, and you can adjust them via dial here. Not the best in terms of operation, slightly loose, could have a little more finesse I think, but it's there, so that's different. You've got the Type C, which is the norm today for charging, and these door handles, you can put some stuff here too, easy access. So a nice practical second row. I would still say the design is such that I won't have three people sitting, you know, comfortably because of this. Maybe a flatter seat like that would have been better. But for 2 people, you can buy the 2-seater version, but if you just must have the third, then I mean, you could sit. This is pretty hard. This is fine, but punishment posting, that's what I would call it. And now let's see what the last row is like. Okay, so easy to come in. You've got this handle that you can use to, pull yourself up, and you don't really need to pull yourself up. Plus, when you step in, this space is tremendous space. Nothing is going to get in the way. As I showed you, could stand up pretty much. As you nothing. I mean, you can't completely stand up, but it's not cramped, and I like that. And you've got electric operation to fold, but only on the left side, not on the right. On the right, you still got to use the lever. Having on both sides would have been a nice touch, like an even thing. But clearly, this is where most people would want to get in, because this is the curb side, that's the main road side. So we get that, but having on both sides would have been nicer. Now, the last row is pretty straight up, but you can adjust it. For that, there's a lever here. And then when the seat back goes back, this seat rises up. So you still make for, it's comfortable, and seats aren't exactly tiny. Of course, thigh support is missing, but it's not really sitting on the floor of the seat. So unlike most other last rows, I think you can spend time here. And you've got some space here, a cup holder to put it. And now let's see what the space looks like if I pull this down. All right, straight up position. This is on the last bit, or the rearmost position on the rail, and you've got this. Of course, nobody's going to sit as straight, so you'd want slight angle, and that's where it probably touches your knee. But this is when it's in the, right at the end. Now let's see if we push it a little ahead, can we get a little more space? There, that's in between. Now you can see. Now if you still space. So I think they've done well in terms of space utilization. And like I said, in an MPV or a car like this, you're going to spend a lot of time commuting. You're going to spend a lot of time on the highway. And if you're going to have more people, I think people can spend time here in terms of seat, in terms of the feeling of space and space overall. So that's not a concern at all. Is the ride as good when you're sitting at the back? Is it as comfortable? That we'll tell you a little later. But I think in terms of having 3 rows set properly, the Carens has got it on that. And maybe I'll go out on a limb here and say it's probably the best in terms of how it sits, to my perception. Of course, when we get this car for a longer term, we will measure it and we'll have the exact data. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but for now, it feels like it probably has the best in its class. And that class could include everything from the Ertiga to the Innova, and like most people are saying, maybe the 7-seater SUVs, which is like the Alcazar. I don't know, it should be cheaper than that, this for sure, but yeah, so that's there. So you've seen that the Carens can seat 6, if not 7, comfortably and with reasonable space, but that's only part of what makes a people mover practical and usable. The other bit, of course, is boot space, and it has to have more than just one thin tiffin box that you can put with all the seats in place. Let's see if the Carens offers more. And it does. This is one of the bigger boot space that I've seen, with all seats in place, no matter what class you choose. And then when you drop the seats, you have boot space that's rivaling SUVs, if not more. And then when you drop the last, then of course there's enough space to sleep even. Now the engine we have here is the 1.5 litre diesel, 115 horsepower, 215 Newton meters of torque. It's the same engine that powers everything from the Seltos and the Sonnet, and in the Hyundai family you've got the Creta and the Venue. It's an engine that we've sampled many times before. It's a I won't say it's a refined and smooth engine, but it's not coarse either. And it only gets noisy when you really rev it. Otherwise, if you're maybe under 2,500 RPM, it's pretty quiet and very drivable. You can use it in the city, you can use it on the highway. And if you drive with a measured foot, it's pretty fuel efficient too. So now we're in normal mode, which is the default mode it comes to every time you switch it on. And it doesn't need a lot of throttle to move along. We're doing 80 kilometers per hour. It's barely revving. It's revving under 2000 RPM. You can only hear the road noise, not the engine. And when you step on it, not step on it, but just prod it, it moves along with vigor, with energy. It's not like it's just a dud sitting there and you need lots of throttle to get it going. So a good drivable engine. It remains on the Carens too. It's only when you floor it that you feel that it could be a little quicker, maybe not as noisy, but for a people carrier, I think it suits. It's fine. I don't really have complaint on that front, because you're not really gonna go aggressive or drive it in a sporty manner, unless this is the only car you have. If that's what it is, then, and you like driving, then we need to see how it handles and how it behaves when you push it. For that, we're going to just shift to sport, floor it, and let's see. Now I can live with a car that isn't exactly very sporty in terms of handling, given that it's an MPV and it's designed to move people, so there are some compromises. What I can't live with, however, is a steering that feels so artificial. Now, Kia's, Hyundai's, the steerings have never been great, and the Carens is no different. There is returnability, so all that is sorted, but it just feels, the heft on the steering just feels a little too artificial. And when you want to enjoy your corners, and the steering just feels so mute and meh. So that's probably one thing that I didn't enjoy on the Carens when it came to driving. The other thing that I feel that Kia should have done better are the brakes. In terms of bite, in terms of power, they're there. But in terms of progression, they just, like, there's nothing and suddenly there's... So when you're driving fast around corners, it's not really that much of an issue, because you're already prepared and you're already braking a little harder than you would normally. But imagine driving in the city in traffic and you want to get on the brake lightly because the traffic is moving slowly, but you get on the brake and it goes ugh. So, and that's been happening to me since morning, since I've been driving when we came to this road through the city. And it gets irritating. So that's something, the calibration or the progression is something that Kia could work with. One of the things with the people mover is that, as we said in the past, comfort is important, and apart from a comfortable seat, space, ride quality plays a big role in that. And on that front, Kia's got it right with the Carens. Now we're on a pretty bad section. The thing with the Carens is that you can hear the suspension more than you can feel it. So it pretty much glides over everything unless there's something really severe. It is a long car, it is a big car, it's meant to carry more people, so it's not exactly super plush. And I'm driving alone, so maybe when we have it loaded, we'd know better, but this is just a first drive, so we're not able to do that right now. So there is that hint of, I wouldn't say stiffness, but maybe a little firm, which tells you that it's set up for a higher load than it is now. But even now we're going over these, like the speed breaker. There's nothing, the rear doesn't kick, you can barely feel it. So I think ride quality wise, the Carens in terms of comfort does well. I really have no complaints apart from the fact that it is a little noisy. which it shouldn't be, because ride is noise, vibrations, and what you feel, right? The bump absorption. So it's just the noise where the Carens could do better, but otherwise I think the suspension setup is good, ride's comfortable, and that's a plus for the Carens. Carens being a 6 or 7 seater option, I think it was really important to feel what the ride feels at the back. We told you about the seats, and at that time we promised that we'll tell you what the ride feels like. So we're on that same bad section that we spoke about when we told you about the ride. The ride felt really good at the front. The ride felt really good in the center, and at the back it's not as good, which is of course obvious because I guess you're sitting and on the wheel or just behind. So there's a little more kicking that you can feel here that you didn't there. And there's a little more vibration that you can feel through the seat, which again you couldn't feel in the front 2 rows. And noise levels are of course similar as they were. Now we're doing 40 kilometers per hour, and that's where you can feel all of this. Now we'll try another run at 60 and see whether that changes how it feels. And let's do that section all over again. So now we're doing 60 kilometers an hour, and there is a difference in ride quality at the back. Everything that we felt at 40 is slightly exaggerated, so there is still vibrations in the seat. I can still hear the suspension, and the only additional thing that's happened is that the car started moving a little more. But the good news is that it's not as excessive or exaggerated as it is in many other cars that I've been in the last row of, where they seem to just bounce around and then makes you sick. But yeah, the last row is where the ride is easily the worst. And it's not just the ride, I think it's also because of the seat and the noise, all of that comes together. Now, we said at the beginning that the Kia Carens was a very thoughtfully designed product, and I hope that over the course of this film we've been able to tell you and show you why and how. Now, for me, the things I like include the design on the inside, the space that's available, the practicality, the seats themselves, comfortable, and the features. It's loaded with features. It's also got some smart options like we've shown you. And on the road, the ride's comfortable, it's easy to drive. So everything that you'd want from a car that you can use in the city, even on the highway, the Kia Carens has it. But of course, there are some things that I didn't like. This blue color, for instance, on the doors, on the dashboard, on the steering. I don't get it, maybe some people will, but to me, even through the course of the day, I've not been able to adjust to that. The other thing is the steering feel and response. I would have liked it better. Of course, it is still easy to drive, but it could have a little more responsiveness or linearity in the way it functions. But the thing that really got my goat was the second row seats. Now this is a 7-seater. That means I've got a bench seat, and you have the option of buying a 6-seater with 2 captain seats. So when you have that option, what you'd like in a 7-seater option is to have a bench that's nice and broad and wide, so that the third person in the center can sit comfortably. That isn't the case. They've contoured the seat, and the seat back itself, which is of course the armrest and with cup holders, is so hard you can't use it. So why would you buy, the 7-seater option? So that, to me, I just didn't get. It should have been more comfortable for all 3 occupants at the back. So these are the things I didn't like. But should you now buy this, the Kia Carens, when it's launched? Now for that, we need to put some things into perspective, and that we'll just tell you. Now, before you make a buying decision, there are 2 things that you need to consider: the fitness of purpose and the value. Fitness of purpose is, of course, what the car is designed to do and how well it delivers on that, and value is a function of what's available for the money that you're getting and in the segment. So, to me, the Carens, when I consider both these things, it goes up against one particular car, and that is the Maruti Suzuki XL6. Not the Hyundai Alcazar, not the Toyota Innova, and definitely not the entry-level Ertiga. Now, I get it, yes, the Carens packs so much more than the XL6 does. So it should, in realistic or in the ideal world, command a higher price for it. But the situation is such that not everybody is asking for an MPV, and the XL6 or the Ertiga sell because they're in that price bracket which ticks the right box. For Carens to be able to get a good customer base, it needs to be priced well too, at least to begin with. To me, if the Carens is priced at par with the Seltos, the current Seltos, or lower, if that would be fantastic, then I see Carens as a huge success. Otherwise, I feel it won't give itself a good chance to succeed. But as a product, I think the Carens is spot on.